If you think laminators are just for office work, think again. In this video, I'm showing you how a simple laminator can totally level up your craft room, from custom embellishments and shaker elements to clever organization and storage hacks. Even easy cards and handmade gifts come together in no time. For example, hack number 6 will blow your mind with how easy and quick it is to create a shiny vellum card front. And number 10 will give you great ideas for a quick and simple handmade gift that you can include with your cards. So are you ready to melt some plastic in the name of creativity? Let's get started. So I've been wanting to try out a laminator for a while now, and I finally got the chance. I received this QFun Laminator a few weeks ago, but I haven't had the opportunity to set it up until today. First of all, I love that it comes with thermal laminating sheets right inside the box. I believe they're 3mm, and it looks like there are a few different sizes included, which is fantastic. I've actually never used a laminator before, so I'm really excited to test it out with a few ideas I've been saving. Let's take a quick look through the pack. Yep, there are definitely different sheet sizes here. 4 sizes, with 3 sheets of each size. These are glossy, but I know there are matte sheets available in the market as well. This smaller one looks really handy for tags or labels, and here's the regular A4 size as well. One of the sheets has a bit of a wrinkle, but I'm sure it'll smooth out once it runs through the machine. Let's open the lid and see what else is included. I haven't plugged the laminator in yet. I wanted to check out all the parts first. Wow, it even comes with a trimmer, which is fantastic. You'll probably need that to trim the edges of your laminating sheets after sealing. It also comes with 3 sizes of binder rings. Super helpful for organizing swatches. And this tiny tool, what is this? It's a corner rounder. I already have one. I love that they included it in this handy little slot. It fits neatly into this little compartment with finger holes, so everything stays tidy. There's also a single hole punch, and it's actually really cute and compact. And right here we've got a spare blade for the trimmer, which is so thoughtful. And here's the best part. You can store all these tools inside the laminator itself. That makes them really easy to access and keeps your workspace tidy. Just a heads up, be careful when you handle the trimmer blade. It's quite sharp. It looked like the little square slot was meant for it, but it later turned out that it's for the blade on the trimmer that fits into that compartment, allowing you to store the trimmer face down inside this tools compartment. The spare blade needs to be stored along with the hole puncher. I would have liked to have a separate compartment for it, since you can cut yourself on the blade if you're not careful when trying to reach for the hole puncher. I can see it's really easy to operate. Just press the power button to turn it on and select your lamination mode between cold, 3mm and 5mm. I'm using a 3mm laminating sheet, as that's what's mentioned on the packaging. The light will continue flashing until the laminator is ready, and it's really quick. It takes about a minute for the green light to stop flashing. It's ready to go. The manual explains that cold lamination doesn't use heat, of course, because it's cold. Instead, it uses a single-sided adhesive laminating film, and it's typically used for things like smooth photo paper or coated paper. I have a few cold laminating sheets from AliExpress that I bought a while back and wanted to use them in this video, but it's already pretty long and I didn't really find anything worthwhile for cold lamination besides my certificates or photos, and I didn't think it was worth wasting your time watching me do that. Now I'll get started with a simple lamination project just to test everything out and see how this machine performs. By the way, if you're interested in purchasing this laminator, there are 2 links, one for the US and one for Canada, so please make sure you use the one that's most appropriate. I'll start with how to use the laminator for craft room organization. It's going to be a game changer for me since I don't have a really large craft room. The first thing I'll laminate is a storage bin divider for one of my little bins of patterned papers. This is a piece of colored copy paper folded in half, which I'll now place in the mid-size lamination sheet and align it so I can have a nice even border all around. Now all I need to do is feed it into the laminator and wait for the magic to happen. I do notice a little bit of smoke coming from the machine, not much, just a little bit, so I'm hoping that's totally normal for a first-time use. There we go, it's gone through. I have very sensitive fingertips, so it feels a little hot to the touch, but it should cool down momentarily. Next, I'll use the trimmer that came with the machine. This is a perfect example of when you'd use it. Let's give it a spin. I'm aiming to keep an even border all around. And here's the finished piece. Now I'll show you how I keep things organized. I have these clear category dividers for my pattern papers, cardstock, and so on. So I'll just slip this one back in where it belongs. I'll need to buy some more laminating sheets to complete the rest of these, not just for my pattern papers, but also my cardstock. Since I have so many different brands, I need to identify and call out for these videos. So organizing them with the dividers would be amazing. By the way, all the supplies I've used are listed in my blog post that's linked in my video description. This next hack is going to help me organize all of my old stamp and die sets that I bought from Amazon or AliExpress, and also with my thousands of paper scraps, and make them more accessible and organized. I'll show you a laminator hack for storage folders. In fact, I have two, and I've already made a few samples to give you an idea of what's possible. This was actually the very first folder I created. I was just trying to figure out what pattern paper to use, and then I added some washi tape because the front ended up looking a bit plain. Here's another one I made, but I kind of messed up the paper measurements. For this one, I used 2 laminating sheets. As you can see, you can actually put things inside, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. There are 2 ways to make these folders, and I'll show you both. So for this folder, I didn't use 2 sheets. Instead, I used 2 of these clear cellophane bags. Laminating sheets can get quite pricey, so if you have cellophane bags on hand, you can definitely use them as a budget-friendly alternative. If not, you'll need to use 2 laminator sheets. I found these cellophane bags at my local dollar store. This size is 5x7, and there are other sizes too, but I chose the 5x7 because it fits nicely inside this laminating sheet, which is 11.5 by 9 inches. I'll show you exactly how that works. Okay, let's move on, and I'll show you how to make the folder using cellophane bags first. I'm starting with a 12 by 12 inch sheet of pattern paper. You can use double-sided paper if you want to design on both sides, but I prefer single-sided. I like having the inside white because it makes it easier to see what's stored in the folder. Now, let's cut the paper down to size. Since my laminating sheet is 11.5 by 9 inches, I'm cutting my paper to 11 by 8.5. That gives me a nice 1/4 inch margin all around for the sheets to melt and fuse during the lamination process. Otherwise, you'll end up with open ends. If you haven't worked with these before, one side is sealed and the other side is open. I already got fingerprints on mine, but that's okay. It won't show once the lamination is done. I'll place my paper inside the sheets with the frayed edge of the paper at the top because I need to trim that edge down after laminating anyway, so I can trim off the frayed edge. Now, since lamination sheets have a bit of static and the paper can shift, I'm using a bit of all-purpose glue to hold the paper in place inside the sheets, just enough to keep it steady during the lamination process. Next, let's prep the cellophane bags. These have flaps with adhesive strips, but we don't need the flaps. I'm cutting them off, so I'm left with just the clear pockets portion. Now I'll peel off the adhesive strip from one bag, line it up with the edge of the paper, and stick it down. I'll repeat the same for the second one, lining it up neatly. This version won't have much of a spine because I'm using the full 5x7 size, but you can make other versions with shorter bags if you want more spine space. Once both bags are attached, I'll fold the laminating sheet over gently. My laminator is heating up. It's blinking right now, which means it's still warming. I've set it to 3 mil because that's the thickness of my laminating sheets. Now that the indicator light is solid green, it's ready to go. I'll feed the sandwich in sealed side first to prevent it from opening up during lamination. I'm holding the whole thing as it goes in just to make sure the bags don't shift. Everything looks sealed, perfect. Now let's open up the top edge to create the opening. There we go, it's cut open. And the sunflower reflections aren't part of the laminating sheet, by the way. I'm sure you figured out by now. All right, so the bottom piece of the cellophane bag is still stuck to the paper, so it's all secure and nothing is moving. Now I'll use my 1/2-inch circle punch to make finger notches. This makes it really easy to open the folder. You can leave it like this if you want, but I like to add a Velcro fastener to keep it closed. So I'll take a pair of Velcro dots, stick the two sides together first, then place them where I want the closure to go. Press down firmly and done. And here's the final touch. These corners are a bit sharp, so I'm using the corner rounder to avoid cutting myself. And here you have it, a neat custom storage folder. Now that we've done the version with the cellophane bags, let me go ahead and show you how to make one using 2 laminating sheets. This pattern is directional, so I need the long side to run vertically. Here's my trim paper, and I'll need 2 laminating sheets for this project. I just realized I made a mistake in cutting. This pattern will end up sideways, which isn't a big deal, but ideally I should have cut the paper the other way so the design would be oriented correctly. So the tip here is, if your pattern is directional, the longer side needs to be cut sideways instead of the right way up. Oh well, let's carry on. I need to cut one of the sheets down to 5 inches wide twice, so I end up with 2 5-inch pieces and a leftover 1-inch strip. Before cutting, I'm trimming off the rounded corners of the laminating sheet. Unfortunately, this isn't looking super tidy since it's hard to slice such a thin strip, but it's totally fine because those edges will be hidden anyway. Now I'll cut 2 5-inch wide pockets. I'm saving the sealed edge of that leftover strip, and you will see me reuse it towards the end of the video. That's all the cutting for now. Now I have my 2 smaller pockets ready, but here's the trick. When you cut a pocket like this, the sticky sides are on the inside, so we need to flip one over so the sticky sides face out, which will then fuse and seal when heat is applied inside the laminator. The seams also need to line up, so flip it like this and make sure it aligns properly. I somehow got a hair stuck to one of these, so it's better to inspect the sheets before you laminate your DNA into them. Lining up the pockets correctly is important. We need the pockets to line up with the bottom edge of the pattern paper so they all melt and fuse together to seal properly and function like a built-in pocket. So be mindful of that alignment. I'll gently close the laminating sheet halfway to hold the first pocket in place. Now I'll take the second pocket, flip it so the glossy sides are touching again, and line it up on the opposite side. Before I run this through the laminator, I'll trim off any overhang so nothing gets jammed in the machine. It doesn't need to be perfectly straight because we'll be cutting it open later anyway. Just making sure everything is clear, and now I'll carefully feed it into the laminator, sealed side first, holding it steady so nothing shifts. Alright, laminating is done. Everything is sealed beautifully. Just double checking, and yes, all sides are sealed properly. Now we need to cut open the top edge. This is why I made sure to line up the frayed edge on top since it would be trimmed away. I'll use my trimmer across the top to cut open the pockets. Both sides open up like distinct pockets. At this point, you can fold the folder in half, but if it doesn't fold easily, you can score along each edge of the spine. I'm just creating a crease now so it folds nicely. There, we now have a folder with a 1-inch spine. Next, I'm rounding off the corners on the top since the bottom ones are still intact. And now let's make the finger notches. Now it's time to add the Velcro fasteners. Press it down firmly, and this looks good. That's it. This folder is done as well. You can add labels right here and on the spine. That's why I prefer single-sided papers for this. Double-sided paper works too, but white interiors are easier for labeling and inspecting your items. This is perfect for storing die sets, stamp sets, scraps of paper, or whatever you like. These folders are going to be super handy for organizing my craft space. All right, let's move on to the next hack. Technique number 3 is another great organization hack that I'm really excited to use in my craft room and thought I should share with you as well. So this is my swatch ring for ink colors, and I also plan to start a cardstock swatch ring as well. I hadn't done that before, and I'm starting with the Spellbinders Color Wheel cardstock. I decided to laminate these swatches because I've noticed that even though I store my swatches in a drawer away from the sunlight, the colors start to fade a little bit over time. That's why I'm planning to redo all of my swatches. I have a bunch of new inks that I haven't swatched yet, so this is going to be a perfect opportunity. Right now, I'm just showing you a quick example, but when I'm ready to organize everything, I'll redo all the ink swatching and laminate the new swatches. I'm using the leftover sheet here, and I'll laminate multiple swatches at once to maximize the space on this sheet. I had used my Sizzix trimmer to cut the piece of cardstock, and as you can see, the edges are a bit frayed. Since I'm laminating it, I might as well clean it up. And here's a little hack I want to share. Something I showed in one of my earlier hacks videos, and it originally came from Jennifer McGuire, so full credit to her. When you're working with narrow paper strips, it's really hard to hold them straight while cutting. So here's what I do. I just stick the strip onto a sticky note. It gives you a larger area to hold, and you can trim it so much easier. Straight edges just make everything feel tidier. All right, now that these are cleaned up, I can slide one of the swatches into the laminating sheet. There's a lot of static here, so things are shifting on me, but let me line that up, and now we are ready to pass this through the laminator. There we are. Now that it's laminated, I'll use my paper trimmer again to get even borders around each piece. We've got a nice clean rectangle, perfect for swatching. That edge of the plastic guard on the trimmer really helps with getting straight, consistent cuts. Since we already have a hole punched, I'll use it as a guide. It's not perfect, but not bad. Now I can add the cardstock swatch to one of the rings that came with the laminator. I'll create the rest of the swatches later once I've reordered some more laminating sheets. The only thing left to do is add a label with the brand and name of the cardstock, and I'm all set. I'll continue building up this swatch ring, and every time I get new inks or cardstock, I can add them in. The lamination is going to help keep the colors true and fresh without fading over time. This next technique is a great way to stretch your supplies, especially your background dyes that don't come with matching stencils or masks. I'm using this beautiful background dye from Pinkfresh Studio. It's incredibly versatile and I love using this. Now, I had tried to cut out a stencil using acetate, but as you can see, it didn't cut through completely. I kept the piece because it had its own use for partial stenciling, but I lost this little diamond in the middle here and now it's useless. So now I want to create another stencil with this dye and have it work the way I'd like it to. The acetate I used was probably too thick, which is likely why it didn't cut all the way through. So instead, I'll try something different, and for that, I'm using a smaller laminating sheet that came with the laminator. My laminator is already heated up and ready to go. I'll place a piece of regular cardstock inside the laminating sheet, making sure there's enough of an edge for the machine to catch and seal properly. Once that's in place, I'll run it through the laminator. All right, now it's nicely fused and everything looks great. You've probably guessed where this is going. I'm bringing in my die cutting machine, and now that the laminated sheet has cooled, I'll cut it with the background die. All right, it needed a second pass and now it's cut beautifully. Now, if you'd prefer, you could laminate just one side of the cardstock and then die cut it. That would make it easier to cut through, but I prefer the plastic on both sides of the stencil to make it last longer. I'll show you what one-sided lamination looks like in one of the next hacks. With just a tiny bit of help from my craft knife, all the pieces came out really easily. It's now completely waterproof and sturdy, so I'll be able to use it with sprays and other mixed media. Let me show you how this compares to the acetate version I cut before. If you look closely at the acetate stencil, edges are jagged and the corners ended up quite sharp. Plus, not all the areas cut through properly. That's likely because the acetate is heavyweight, heat-resistant material, and it's from Salmon Says Stamp, so it's not ideal for intricate dies. But this laminated cardstock version has super smooth edges, no fibers or rough corners, and all the details came through perfectly. Definitely a better option in my opinion. I actually showed another method for creating DIY stencils in an earlier hacks video. If you don't have a laminator or acetate, that one's worth checking out. I've linked it in the video description. Now I'll show you the stencil in action. I've taped it down and I'm just doing a quick demo here, not being too careful. And there we go. Perfect stenciling. I can trim this panel down and use it as a background on a card. To clean the stencil is super easy. I just spray it with a little bit of water for dye inks and wipe it with a rag, being gentle even though it's laminated. There we go, clean and ready for reuse. Let me show you another example. Here I use the stencil with my new shimmer relief paste from Altenew. I created a partial stenciling effect, perfect for creating a textured grounding element or a focal point. After I was done with the paste, I cleaned the stencil with a baby wipe, and look, it's as good as new, ready to go again. This is such a great way to stretch your supplies, especially your cover plate dies or any die for that matter that doesn't come with a coordinating stencil. With this hack, you can create your own durable, reusable stencil. So having a laminator really opens up more options. And if you don't have one, don't worry. Check out that earlier hacks video I mentioned for an alternative method. I have to say, I'll be using my laminator a lot. Let's proceed with the next hack that's along similar lines of stencil creation, but will open up more possibilities for you. In this hack, I'll show you how to create masks using your laminator. I have these journal card dies I'll use with a piece of lightweight cardstock, the same one I used for making the stencil earlier. I'm also using a medium-sized laminating sheet for this. I'll start by laminating the cardstock. Now I'll create 3 masks. I'll be die cutting the laminated piece using the journal card dies, and I'll show you how you can use them. I'll run this through my die cutting machine, and these are cut out perfectly. So now you basically have a stencil and a mask set. You can use the stencil like I'm doing now, and then you can use the cutout piece as a mask, which you'll see me doing in just a bit. You can tap off the excess ink onto your laminated stencil before applying it to your cardstock, and then pull in the ink from the side again. That way there's no ink wastage. You can use both the negative and the positive pieces to create different effects. So let's say I want to use this shape here. I'll stick it down and use a tape runner, and then I'll add the magnet on top for good measure to keep it steady. Don't worry, it's only the magnet moving. The mask itself is staying in place. So now I have this lovely mask shape, and I can reuse these over and over again. Now, because I use the tape runner on the back, I can feel the stickiness on the back of the piece. There are a couple of ways to deal with that. Option 1 is to dab a little embossing powder on top of the sticky area. That removes the tackiness completely. But the alcohol method works really well. I'll spritz a little bit of alcohol and then wipe it away. I could just stuck these small masks into this folder and label them. Super handy, and you've made a reusable tool with minimal materials. Are you ready to see how you can create a floating vellum panel without it flip-flopping around? Let's get started. So here's the next thing I'm working on. I'm using the smallest of the laminating sheets. This one came in the pack along with the larger ones. This packet is marginally larger than an A2 size. I'm using this beautiful foiled vellum from Spellbinders. It's a 6x6 design and has such a lovely finish. I'll also use this lace I purchased eons ago from AliExpress. It's absolutely gorgeous with gold accents, so it coordinates perfectly with the vellum. I want to create a floating vellum panel, but it would be really tricky to adhere since vellum is delicate and I don't want the panel flip-flopping around. So instead, I'll laminate the vellum. Now, one thing to note is that there are laminating sheets available in a matte finish, and using that would keep the vellum looking really delicate. Unfortunately, I don't have any matte laminating sheets, but I wanted to try this technique anyway, so I'll use the regular glossy sheets I have for this project. To start, I'll trim the vellum sheet down because I want to make sure the laminate sticks well, which means I need to leave some space around the edges. Don't put your vellum edge to edge inside the sheet or it won't seal properly. And the offcut, I can totally laminate that too and make a bookmark out of it. Now I'll sandwich the vellum inside the laminating sheet and place it inside a sheet of copy paper cover. I need to feed the sandwich folded end first, so the loose end doesn't get snagged inside the machine. And look at that, it's going to look amazing on a card. I'll cut this at 5.5 and then round the corners with the corner punch. I'll make this into a 5x7 card, so I'll start with attaching the lace using matte gel. Matte gel is great for mixed media since it's strong and dries clear, so any of it oozes out around the edges, it won't show. I'll trim the lace down and adhere it to the laminated panel. Next, I'll use some foam rounds behind the panel to make the panel float over the card base. Again, because it's laminated, it gives the vellum structure. If it weren't laminated, the vellum would just flap around, literally. But the laminate gives it that nice sturdy base while still showing off the delicate design. I wish I had the matte laminating sheets, which would have made this amazing. I'll reserve it for another video. And here's the finished card. I added a few pearls and this foiled sentiment I had in my stash. I adhered the sentiment to the floating panel with matte gel and then popped a narrow foam strip behind the floating panel to stabilize it. And that's it. Such a simple card, but it's absolutely beautiful and can be used as a wedding, engagement, or anniversary card. I could add more layers behind the vellum panel for more texture and dimension, but I'm enjoying this simplicity a lot. This is just another really creative way to use your laminator. Stick around for the next amazing laminator hack to help create a stained glass effect on your cards. Ready? So I actually just found this idea on Anne Melvin's Positively Papercraft channel, and it blew my mind. I'll put a link to her channel in the video description. She's an amazing crafter and very clever. Great channel for learning techniques. I wanted to make a full disclosure here. This was the very first time I literally tried this technique on camera, and it didn't end perfectly, but I'm sure you'll learn from my mistake. So I've die cut a background design here, and what I want to do is laminate just the back of it. That's going to allow me to create a stained glass effect. I'll use a laminating sheet for this, but I only need one side. Make sure you're using the inside of the sheets, the part that actually melts, because that's the part that will bond to the back of the die cut. I'm just trimming down the overhanging edges to avoid any sticking or damage to the machine. You don't want any plastic flaps curling into the rollers. The glossy side of the sheet is the outside, and we're using the inside, which is the sticky side, against the back of the die cut. Now I'll pop it straight through the laminator without putting it inside a copy paper folder like you've seen me do with the vellum one. If you use paper or cardstock, it's going to get stuck to the front of the die cut and it's going to be ruined. Once it comes through the machine, only one side will be laminated, which is exactly what we want. It's done laminating, and now I'll trim off the extra overhanging film. So here's what it looks like. This is the glossy laminated side on the back of the die cut. Now I'll turn this into a stained glass effect using my Ohuhu alcohol markers. If you're interested, the colors I'm using are PB1, V150, BG4, G110, Y3, GY172, R11, and R5. So here's an important tip. Make sure you're coloring on the glossy laminated side on the back, not the right side of the die cut like I just did. I started coloring on the wrong side by mistake, and the alcohol marker bled right through, and I was completely puzzled until I realized I was coloring on the front of the die cut. So I flipped it over to the reverse side, which is actually laminated, and naturally the colors won't bleed through the laminated surface if you were to color over the lines. Now that I've fixed that, you can see there's no bleeding and the colors look much cleaner. I can't really use this panel to make a card since I ruined it, but I'll finish coloring this in so you can see the final result. I could of course place another die cut on top to salvage it, but I'm not going to, since the colors I chose ended up being a little too pale against the background, as you'll soon see in a second. And just like that, you get this beautiful stained glass effect minus the really light tiles where the colors are barely visible. Also, if you find your coloring looks a little bit patchy or uneven, just go over those areas a second time. It really helps to smooth things out. I had saved some of the negative pieces from the die cut, and the center one could be reused for the sentiment, as you see me showing you here. So this is another hack that I think is absolutely brilliant, and I'm definitely going to retry this, but next time with brighter colors just to make those details pop, and make sure that I'm coloring on the laminated side. Let's proceed with the next one. This technique is one I've been wanting to try for such a long time. Gina K's polyglaze sheets. These are printed with toner ink, and you simply use deco foil, which is different from hot foil, by the way, and it creates beautiful foil designs without a hot foil machine. The toner reacts with the foil when passed through a laminator, and that's how you get that lovely foiled effect. Unfortunately, I don't have deco foil on hand right now. When I first got into foiling, I didn't realize hot foil and toner foil were two completely different types. So I bought these rolls from Amazon thinking they'd work in my hot foiling machine, but of course they didn't. I never used them until I got this laminator. I thought, let me try and see if they'll work with polyglaze sheets. I've already tested one sheet using silver foil and it gave me this sentiment here. It's not perfect. You can see a bit of a distressed look, kind of a spotty coverage, but that's probably because of the foil, not the polyglaze sheet. The foil I used is definitely lower quality, so I'm not expecting perfection. Still, I wanted to show you the process if you've never tried this before. Let me go ahead and prep another piece. Now, because we're not laminating in the traditional sense, we're fusing the foil to the toner. I don't need to use a laminating sheet for this. I'll use a copy paper folder to protect the laminator. I want to make sure the foil covers edge to edge, and then I'll feed it through the laminator, which is already hot and ready to go. Now this is ready. Let's pass it through and see how it turns out. I can already tell the foil has adhered. Now for the big reveal, not bad. Again, not perfect. There are some missed spots, but you can see the foiling worked. I'll definitely be picking up some deco foil and hope for better results in the future. For now, I'll fussy cut these designs and use them on a card. The negative piece is all scratched up, but I want to try to repurpose it using some double-sided adhesive. It's all down to the foil quality, but it's worth experimenting. Let me show you what I ended up doing. I used alcohol markers to lightly color in the foiled images. Nothing fancy, just a bit of shading. I have a top folding card base here, and from my scrap bin, I pulled out this die-cut background panel. Here's the finished card. Super simple, yet really pretty. I also added a few Printfresh Studio embellishments, and this card is done. The foiling wasn't perfect, but you still get that gorgeous shimmer, and it looks really nice. It's honestly so easy to use a laminator with these polyglaze sheets. I picked up 2 packs. One is full of sentiments and the other has these beautiful floral motifs. I'll definitely be using all of them. They make card making so easy and fun. Okay, the next hack I wanted to show you is all about creating a shaker element using lamination. You've already seen me do the one-sided lamination earlier, and I'll repeat that same technique here. I pulled this piece out of my pre-made background stash. I'll make a birthday card with it, and to make it extra fun, I'm turning it into a shaker. Remember, we only need to laminate one side, so I've cut down the lamination sheet accordingly. I need to make sure there's no gap around the edges. This seems crooked, so I'll just trim off the extra and realign everything. It's super important to get full coverage. We don't want any shaker bits falling out through the gaps, right? So I'll run this through the laminator now. Once that's done, I'm just trimming off the edges like before. Now, because the edges are really thin, I can't use foam tape around the border. It just won't work. So this is going to be a flat shaker card. Now for the fun part. I have these shaker bits and I'm actually going to create a double shaker card. Here's the idea. This background here will be the flat shaker, and then I'll use this happy birthday sentiment from my stash and pop it up on foam tape to create a second shaker right in front. So you get a flat shaker in the background and a traditional shaker on top. Super fun. These shaker bits are really pretty and I'm spreading them around so they don't bunch up. Now I'm just going to apply glue around the edges, and I want everything inside to stay inside and not fall out. While that's drying, I've picked out 3 shades of blue for the next shaker layer. Let's create the shaker frame now with some thin foam strips. Here's a tip. When you're working around curved edges, remove the backing from the foam strip. That makes it easier to bend and shape it exactly how you need it. I'm making sure there are no gaps in the foam strip, and yeah, I'm touching it a lot, so I'll be adding some glue to help it stick better, since the oils from my fingers can affect the adhesive. All right, this is going in the center now. One more tip. I'll brush a bit of anti-static embossing powder around the inside edge of the foam so the sequins don't stick to it. There's a tiny gap here, but since the sequins are larger than the gap, it'll be fine. I'll use my brush to make sure I remove all the excess anti-static powder from the frame. I use glue, I have a little time to wiggle the frame around before it sets. So this is looking great, and because the shaker layer underneath is flat, you can really see all the sequins clearly. And you don't even need acetate if you're using laminating sheets. Just laminate one side of the shaker frame and you're good to go. Now let's transition over to some gift ideas, shall we? Now I have a sheet of vellum here and I want to create some bookmarks. My laminator is already heating up. I have it off to the side while I get started on the prep work. First, I'm trimming the vellum to the right size. Now I want to make 2 bookmarks, not just one big panel. If I simply slice it down the center, it won't work properly because I need a clear gap in the middle for trimming. So here's what I'll do. The sheet itself measures just under 4.5 inches wide and the vellum is about 4 1/8. If I want 2 equal bookmarks, I'll measure and trim at 1.5 inches and then at 3 inches, giving me 2 equal sized panels and a small offcut. Using my trimmer, I first cut at 3 inches, then again at 1.5 inches. Now I have my 2 bookmark pieces ready. I have some washi tape stickers to add a pop of color. I think I'll make each bookmark slightly different. I'm just adjusting the stickers so it doesn't hang off the edge. If it does, I just lift it off and reposition it using my little pick tool. Now I'll press everything down nicely and place both vellum pieces into the laminating sheet and space them out so there's a good border around each one. That way I can trim it cleanly later. Before sealing the sheets, I'll add some glitter, just a little sprinkle. Of course, thanks to the static, it's already flying everywhere. I knew this was coming, but we'll carry on as if nothing's happened. Let's close up the sheets to avoid more mess. To protect the laminator, I'm again placing the sandwich inside a copy paper. Now, I'll feed it through the laminator. I should have used the scrap paper from the start, but here we are. I can hear a bit of a crackling sound. That's the glitter going through the rollers. And look at that. It's turned out beautifully. So pretty and delicate. Okay, I'll clean up all the glitter and then come back to finish off the bookmarks. I accidentally forgot to hit the record button while I was prepping this, but here's what I did. After the sheet was laminated, I trimmed around each bookmark, leaving a thin border. Then I used the corner rounder that came with the laminator to round off all the corners. I also used the single hole punch to punch a hole in the top of each one. Now, I'm just threading some ribbon through. You can either leave the ribbon ends loose or tie them into a bow. This would make a perfect little gift for a book lover. You could slip it inside a card or pop it into a book you're gifting. And just look at how pretty these turned out. The glitter may have spilled onto the edges a bit, but I think it adds a nice shimmer. One side has more sparkle while the other stays plain. And that's it. 2 sparkly handmade vellum bookmarks ready to gift. So here's a bonus bookmark idea with a scrap piece of laminating sheet from one of the earlier segments. Remember when I used the Gina K polyglaze falling sheets? I had some leftovers from that project. There were 4 floral clusters on the page, of which I used 2 on this card that you saw me make earlier, and I still had a couple left to use. So I colored one of the remaining clusters, and here's what I ended up with. It's a bit too long to use as a bookmark, but I have a large A4 size journal, and this fits perfectly inside that. Along those lines, let's explore another way to turn those scraps into tags. I wanted to create a quick embellishment with another piece of scrap laminating sheet, and since this is just a demo, I hope you don't judge me on the design. What I basically did was heat emboss this tiny piece of vellum and laminated it just like I did with the bookmark, and then of course rounded the corners, punched a hole through it, and you can add a ribbon or a twine to dress it up, and you can use it as a gift tag or you can use it as a topper on a card. This is such a simple thing to do to elevate your gifts, whether it's for a special occasion, for holidays, etc. Maybe add a personalized message in the tag or heat emboss a sentiment and then laminate it and add it as a gift tag or a card topper. Now, if you want to learn about more hacks for card making, you should check out this video here.